You are a complex woman. I can't follow your whole business career. So what was your business career?
Well, it's sort of let's see, what is the word? A little jagged, or a little, it's not real consistent.
I know. You're very creative. You dabble in this, you dabble in that. You do a lot of different things. So after you sold that business, what did you do for a living?
Well, I had Vagabonds up in the Heights.
Oh, really?
With Tracy Dutterar. And there again.
Tell our guests what that sold. What you sold at Vagabonds.
Oh, we were some of the first that had espresso coffee, and we had vintage clothes and just cool things, modern kind of things that are retro, and we also had desserts, and then we had people that played music, and it was kind of behind Boulevard in the Heights.
And why'd you quit doing that? Because it was successful.
Well,
just got tired of it.
I'm just not yes.
You're so creative. You're like, made that, did it, got to go on to the next thing. But now we're coming up on 2004, and you've become the driving force in the developing the whole south end of Maine. Bernice Garden, the Lincoln Building, the Sweden Creme Drive-In that's now the Root Cafe, and your Esse Purse Museum. What?
Kerry.
What?
Okay.
What did I say wrong?
Okay. The Bernice Building, where Boulevard and Moxie, that was my very first building, and I still own that one. And I sold the Sweden Creme building to Kerry and Jack.
Oh, you did?
A year or two ago. I can't remember exactly. But after they got the wonderful grant, they really wanted to invest in that property, and it made sense to them to buy the property. So. And we really wanted to keep them in the South Main area. So,
Anita Davis, can I just say, I love you. That was a very good thing for you to do with them.
Well, they're just such a boon for our area.
They're great people.
Yes. So, yes.
So I'll quit saying you own the Sweden Creme Drive-In where the Root Cafe is, but you did buy it, develop it,
right,
for Root Cafe, and then they have recently.
No, I didn't. It was before I even knew about them. It's sort of like, you're pregnant with with something, but you don't know exactly what you're going to get, and you're kind of getting the room already. So that's kind of the way it was.
I've noticed that all entrepreneurs have that spiritual bent. You just described it perfectly. You're pregnant with these ideas. And you just have faith that if you keep, growing your idea, it's going to all work out.
Well, it's really interesting how that happens. And it's also interesting that if you kind of identify your philosophy, other people will kind of pair up with you and understand that that's my philosophy too. I want to do that. And it's really just taking care of the land. And we want a walkable community so that we don't have to rely on our cars so much, and we want to make it slow, the traffic slow down just a bit so that we can all walk and not be scared that we're going to be hit. And then also, it sort of makes us pay attention to the litter and the trash that's on the street so that it's not going down into the storm drains and ruining the Fish Creek. So there's all kinds of opportunities there. And the garden is about having more dirt. The dirt takes in the rain, and we don't have as much flood. And so we have beautiful little curb knockouts in our area that are actually planted with a lot of beautiful things.
What do you mean you have curb knockouts?
Well, they're those things at...
I know it's the radio. It's hard to visualize.
I know.
So along the curbs you
yes,
have.
It's where there is dirt, where you can grow things right there at the corners.
Oh, little gardens all the way up to the edge.
Yeah.
I love that.
And the Business Improvement District takes care of that in our area.
You've been called an accidental real estate developer.
Yeah, it was accidental for sure.
Mark Stodler, our mayor, he said you were a godsend to South on Main. Look, she's rolling her eyes. People out there in radio land, she's rolling her eyes. So you went to a convention, a Main Street convention in Seattle, Washington, and heard this term called placemaking, and it resonated with you. Did you already own the property when you heard this term, or did you hear this term and decide, I'm going to start buying up property? Which came first?
I think I bought the property first, but I was also, I had already tried to figure out what my part in taking care of the earth was. And so it sort of gelled to think about my upbringing in this little bitty town and to see this area that could use some goods and services for the neighborhood. And so that's kind of how it played out.
Tell people what placemaking means.
Well, it's, I guess you would, okay, so like in 2004, I bought that property, and I've got to tell you the story about that. Mm-hmm. It's the Bernice Building, and Bernice is my grandmother's name. And so I looked
about serendipity.
I know, I looked up and I thought, I believe this may be the one.
A sign.
Uh-huh. And so, and then in 2005, I bought the property next to it that Steve Patrick owned, and he bought property on down a little bit further on 15th Street, 15th.
In Maine?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
And so then it gave me the opportunity to build the garden and do it sustainably so that it has a drip system and all that. But I'm getting to your question just a minute.
I'm following you. Keep
Okay.
it up.
Okay. So my grandmother she had 4 children, and she really didn't get to live in one town for very long. And she lived here with her sister toward the end of her life, and she worked at Frankie's cafeteria. And basically, in the south part of our world, they say that's when a person never got a dinner, and it's sort of a old saying that they weren't really honored the way they probably would have been appropriate for her to be honored.
Why? What do you mean she wasn't honored?
Well, she never got a dinner.
What do you mean she never got a dinner? What do you mean? Is that a saying? She
Yes,
never got a dinner.
right.
What does that mean?
It means that so when people retire, they either give you a watch back in the old days, or they give you a dinner.
She never got a dinner. She never got a dinner party.
Right.
Basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that would be from Little Rock, what we would say never got a dinner party.
Yeah, but in the South they say she never got a dinner.
Right.
She didn't get her gold watch. She didn't get her dinner.
Right. So she got a garden on Main Street.
Oh, I love it. I see it now. It came together right there, Anita. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, but that's not exactly placemaking, but it is sort of, because that is a place that could be where community gathers.
So you're really proud of that? You feel like it was serendipity? Your
Yes.
grandmother's
Yes.
name, Bernice
Yes.
Gardens, and then the building that was Bernice Building
Yes.
is now Boulevard Bread?
Uh-huh.
Is that right?
And Moxie.
Which is a mercantile store.
Right.
Moxie
It's
Mercantile.
a really fun, wonderful store.
So we got to take a break, but I want to tell you Moxie Mercantile story. She's the reason I have this radio show.
Really?
She really is. I one day left church, and I was driving down Main Street, and she was open on that Sunday. And I thought, I've never been in there, but I heard they had funny, dirty cards. So I went in there to get a funny, dirty card, and I'm looking around, and she was working. The owner was working, and she found out who I was, and she said, I've got some internet questions I want to ask you. And we talked for 30 minutes about advertising and internet marketing. And when I got in the car, I thought, there's a bunch of things I forgot to tell her. And then as I drove away, I thought, I'll call her later. And then I realized that week I had been emailed, called, and run into somebody who had asked me business advice. And I thought, I'm going to start a radio show and start telling people what I know.
I love that.
I know.
Laura Kaler is an incredible woman.
She's doing a good job down
Yeah.
there. So you started buying them in 2004, I believe, and you bought all the way up till you started buying piecemealing and buying all the way up till you bought the Esse Purse Museum in what year? The building that it's in.
That was 2011.
So in 2011, you bought the Esse Purse Museum. Was that the last building you bought?
Yes.
And how did that come about?
I had a traveling exhibit that traveled the United States from 2006 to 2011. It started in Concord, Massachusetts, and it ended up in Seattle. And it went to a lot of small history museums in between, and it came to HAM here, Historic Arkansas Museum. And Bill Worthen rented it, and he rented it again because he said it was the best attended special exhibit that they had. So that gave me a clue that whenever it came back from this traveling exhibit, that it might be a good idea to plant it in the SOMA area.
So the name of that exhibit was The Purse and the Person, A Century of Women's Purses.
Yes, that was right.
And I've never known anybody that had a traveling exhibit ever. Do you get paid do people pay you for your exhibit?
No, you don't. You actually you have to pay the curators yourself, and then it's an awful lot of work because it is all packed up, it's identified correctly, and it's shown. Then they curate it, and then they put it in a semi-trailer truck, and then they rent it in all these different places. And so many of the exhibit companies have went out of business. That was between 2006 and 2011. So 2008 was really hard on that business.
Why?
The economy.
Oh, that's right. 2008, the banking crisis.
Right. So anyway, I sort of knew that if I ever wanted to do anything with the purses, it would give it good promotion, that collection. And so...
tell me how you started collecting purses.
Well, let's see. My mother was quite a fashionista, clothes horse, and she loved to shop. And so I was an only child and dragged along after her. And so I learned a lot about accessories and shoes and purses and all that.
How many closets did this woman have?
Oh,
or a room? She had a room.
Yeah. And so anyway,
so she started really collecting.
Well, she just bought because she didn't like anything old necessarily. She just wanted new things, and somehow I got the gene for liking old things. So. So anyway, I would go to the flea markets, but I recognized the quality that my mother had taught me. So that's kind of, I guess. But, when you go to a flea market and you see things that other people don't value, but you value, you get excited about it. And especially if it's not where you are expecting to find it.
Why purses?
I don't know. But what I do know is, looking back, I was being taught when I moved here about the feminine and the divine feminine, all in the, Susan was really teaching me all this stuff. And then I was learning how to interact with women in a healthy way, And so then I realized that I was collecting a container for the feminine. But I had no idea that any of that was really, this sounds so kind of crazy, but it's the truth, and it's kind of the way it happened. So
the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a phrase that can be Googled?
Yes.
So I think we should put that on the website, the divine feminine.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it led you to where you are today. I've heard you call this end of South Main the feminine area of Little Rock.
Yes, because I feel like it's a kind of a warm and friendly place, and it is something that this whole area has suffered, and I feel like it is a part that really is in need of nurturing, and a woman is a nurturer usually. So
can't help it. We can't help it.
Nope.
If it's broken, we'll fix it.
Try to anyway.
We'll try to. If you were going to tell yourself of 20 years ago something, or 40 years ago something, what would it be? That's always a hard one.
Figure out who you are.
Do more dream work.
Yeah.
I think that dream work, you've mentioned it several times, really opens you up.
Important to me. And, I was raised Baptist, and I was taught about dreams in that religion.
In the Baptist religion?
Yeah. But not to the Union extent. But it sort of made it okay because I was very, I was trying to do the right thing. And it did open up a whole world for me that taught me things that I feel like have impressed on me, for all my life.
The Bible is full of dreams.
Yes.
It really is. We had a woman in here not too long ago who lost her Madonna Badger, and she lost her 3 daughters and her mother and her father in a house fire Christmas Eve the night before.
Oh, in New York.
Yes, and she
Yes.
was on the radio show about a month ago, and she
Wow.
came on, and
Uh-huh.
she said that the turning point for her was one day when she was in her bathroom crying and looked in the mirror and said, and had this kind of out of body experience, and she said, that woman in the mirror is in so much pain. She said, didn't even look like me. And she said, and while she was staring at this woman in the mirror thinking, wow, that woman's hurt, her children, her deceased children and mother and father came around her in the mirror and told her that it was okay and that dreams were more real than life.
I love it.
And she said from that point on, she began to get well.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Kerry. It's fun to tell your story.
It was great to hear your story. Man, oh man, you're an inspiration to all of us.